Hi, I'm Scotty. After 35 years of marriage to David, I thought I'd seen it all when it came to family drama. That was until my son Michael married Vanessa last spring. Don't get me wrong, I tried to be the welcoming mother-in-law, the one who doesn't meddle or judge. But some lines shouldn't be crossed, and mocking my husband's burn scars? That's a boundary made of concrete and steel. Mom, we're here! Michael called from the entryway. I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel and went to greet them for our monthly family dinner. There's my boy, I said, hugging Michael before turning to Vanessa. Her smile seemed practiced, not quite reaching her eyes. Vanessa, lovely to see you. Your father's joining us today, right? Yes, Dad's running late. Important client meeting, she replied, checking her phone. He's never met David before, has he? No, your wedding was the first time I met him too, but David was recovering from surgery then, I explained, leading them to the living room where David sat in his armchair. David stood, his left arm and face bearing the scars from the factory fire 15 years ago. He'd saved 3 people that day, a hero by any measure. Michael, good to see you, son, David said, embracing Michael before extending his hand to Vanessa. Vanessa, always nice when you visit. I noticed Vanessa's slight hesitation before shaking his hand. A flicker of disgust crossed her face so quickly I almost missed it. David, how are you feeling? Better than at the wedding, I hope? Her tone was pleasant enough, but something felt off. Much better, thank you. Just part of the ongoing maintenance of all this. He gestured casually to his scars. The doorbell rang, and Michael went to answer it. Must be Richard, he said, referring to Vanessa's father. As we settled in the living room, Richard, a distinguished-looking man in his early 60s, seemed pleasant if somewhat reserved. So, David, Vanessa said during a lull in conversation, Michael tells me you were some kind of hero during that accident. Must have been awful. Do children get scared when they see you at the supermarket? The room went silent. David's face remained composed, but I knew him well enough to see the hurt flash in his eyes. Vanessa! Michael exclaimed, clearly mortified. What? I'm just asking. I mean, they look pretty intense, she continued, gesturing toward David's scars. I've been meaning to ask if you've considered more cosmetic procedures. There are amazing plastic surgeons these days. That's enough, I said firmly, my hands gripping my knees to keep from shaking. Richard was staring at his daughter with an expression I couldn't quite read. He'd gone noticeably pale. I'm simply suggesting, Vanessa began. You're being incredibly disrespectful, I interrupted. David saved 3 lives the day he was injured. Scotty, it's all right, David said quietly, always the peacemaker. Richard suddenly stood up. Excuse me, he said tightly, walking briskly toward the bathroom. What's his problem? Vanessa muttered. Later that evening, after Vanessa and Michael had gone to the kitchen to help with dessert, Richard approached me with a strange intensity. Mrs. Harrison, he said quietly, I need to speak with you privately. It's about Vanessa and what she said to your husband. Something in his tone made me uneasy. Of course. Let's step onto the patio. As he closed the door behind us, Richard turned to me with haunted eyes. There's something you should know about our family. Something that makes what happened tonight unforgivable. What do you mean unforgivable? I asked Richard, watching his face carefully in the dim patio light. Richard ran a hand over his face. My wife, Vanessa's mother, died in a house fire when Vanessa was only 8. A man tried to save her. He was severely burned in the process. My heart sank. Richard, I had no idea. How could you? Vanessa never talks about it. She was there that day, saw everything. The man who tried to save Clara looked much like your husband afterward. He visited Vanessa in therapy for years, a brave man who carried those scars as badges of honor. And she just mocked David's scars, knowing what she knows? My voice was barely above a whisper. That's why I needed to speak with you. This isn't just insensitivity. It's something deeper. She's been in and out of therapy most of her life, but lately she's stopped going. Says she's fixed now. Last month, she made a scene at a restaurant when our server had a facial birthmark. Have you spoken to Michael about this? I've tried hinting, but she's masterful at presenting herself as perfect to him. I love my daughter, but I'm deeply concerned about her behavior. The sliding door opened and Michael poked his head out. Dessert's ready. Everything okay out here? Just getting to know each other, Richard replied smoothly. The next morning, I called my friend Elena, who'd been a therapist for 30 years. It sounds like she's developed some complex trauma responses, Elena said after I explained. The mockery could be a defense mechanism, distancing herself from her own pain by inflicting it on others with similar features to her trauma. That doesn't excuse it, I said firmly. No, it doesn't. Has your son noticed these behaviors? I sighed. Michael sees what he wants to see. He's always been an optimist to a fault. You should talk to him. Document incidents if you can. He deserves to know who he's married to. Later that week, I invited Michael for coffee alone. Mom, is this about what Vanessa said? She was just being curious. Maybe a bit tactless, he began defensively. Michael, listen to me. This isn't an isolated incident. Has she made comments about other people with visible differences? His hesitation told me everything. She notices things, he admitted reluctantly. Richard told me about her mother, about the fire. Michael's eyes widened. She made me promise never to bring that up. Says it's too painful. Yet she feels comfortable inflicting that pain on others. On your father. She's been under stress at work, he argued weakly. An older woman at the next table looked up. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't help overhearing. I'm Barbara. I was Vanessa's elementary school counselor after the incident. Michael stared at her. You knew Vanessa as a child? Barbara nodded solemnly. I did, and I remember her being incredibly compassionate toward the man who tried to save her mother. She would draw him pictures, thank him for trying. The change you're describing concerns me greatly. This is crazy, Michael muttered. You're all making her sound like some kind of monster. Not a monster, I said gently. Someone who needs help. 2 days later, Michael showed up at my door looking exhausted. I went through her social media accounts, he said without preamble. She has a private Instagram where she posts photos of people with visible differences. With captions, Mom. Horrible captions. Michael's hands shook as he showed me his phone. Look at these. Hundreds of posts. Strangers with scars, birthmarks, amputations, all photographed without their knowledge and mocked in the captions. How did you find this account? She left her laptop open. I wasn't snooping, I swear. I was just going to order something when I saw the tab. He collapsed onto my sofa. There's worse. She has a group chat where they share these photos. They call themselves the normies. Michael, this isn't just cruel. It's possibly illegal. I confronted her last night, he said, his voice hollow. What happened? She denied it at first, then tried to play it off as dark humor. When I wouldn't let it go, He pulled up his sleeve, revealing finger-shaped bruises on his arm. She did this to you? My voice rose in disbelief. Grabbed me when I tried to leave. Said if I told anyone about her account, she'd tell everyone I was the one who took the photos, that I was setting her up. The doorbell rang. David answered it, returning with Richard. I hope you don't mind my dropping by, Richard said. Michael called me this morning. I didn't know who else to talk to, Michael admitted. Dad doesn't need this stress with his upcoming procedure. David sat beside me, taking my hand. I'm tougher than I look, son. We need to address this directly, I said firmly. This behavior, mocking people, documenting strangers without consent, the physical aggression, it has to stop. I've contacted her former therapist, Richard said. She's deeply concerned. The behavior Vanessa's exhibiting represents a significant regression. She needs help, but I don't know if I can stay in this marriage, Michael said quietly. I don't even know who she is anymore. The first step is a direct confrontation, I suggested. All of us, together. She can't manipulate the narrative if we're all present with the evidence. She'll deny everything, Michael warned. Let her try, David said with uncharacteristic firmness. Some things need to be brought into the light. We agreed to meet at our house the following evening. Richard would bring Vanessa under the pretense of a family dinner to discuss David's upcoming procedure. When they arrived, Vanessa seemed her usual composed self, though I noticed her eyes darting around the room, perhaps sensing something was different. "Vanessa, please sit down," I said. "We need to talk." Her smile faltered slightly. "What's this about? Is something wrong with the surgery?" "This isn't about my surgery," David said calmly. "It's about your behavior." "My behavior? What are you talking about?" Michael placed his phone on the coffee table, the Instagram account visible on the screen. "This is what we're talking about, Vanessa." She stared at the phone, her face cycling through shock, anger, and finally a cold calculation that was chilling to witness. "You went through my private accounts? That's a violation of my privacy," she exclaimed. "Don't try to flip this around," Richard said wearily. "What you've been doing is not just hurtful, it's potentially illegal." "It's just jokes, Dad. Dark humor. Everyone does it." "No, they don't," I countered firmly. "And what about what you said to David? Was that just dark humor too?" "Oh, please," she scoffed. "It was a valid question. Those scars are disturbing. Children probably do stare." David leaned forward. "Yes, sometimes they do. And then I explain what happened, and they learn about bravery and sacrifice instead of fear and judgment." "How noble," she sneered. "Vanessa," Richard said sharply, "this isn't you, not the real you, not the little girl who used to draw pictures for Mr. Grayson after he tried to save your mother." "Don't you dare bring that up," she shouted, standing suddenly. "That has nothing to do with this." "It has everything to do with it," Michael said quietly. "You know exactly how it feels to lose someone to fire, to see the scars of someone brave enough to try to help. Yet here you are, mocking my father for the exact same thing." "You're all against me," she said, her voice taking on a theatrical quality. "We want you to get help," I said firmly. "This behavior has to stop." "Or what?" she challenged, looking directly at me. "Or there will be consequences," I stated simply. "Legal and personal." She laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "What are you going to do, sue me for being mean?" "Harassment and invasion of privacy are serious offenses," Richard said. "This could have severe legal ramifications." "And as your husband," Michael added, "I'm telling you our marriage cannot continue unless you get professional help." "You wouldn't dare leave me," she hissed, grabbing Michael's arm just as she had before. David stood immediately. "Take your hand off my son. Now!" The tension in the room crystallized as Vanessa's fingers dug into Michael's arm, her nails leaving crescent marks. For a moment, no one moved. "I said, take your hand off my son," David repeated, his voice unnervingly calm. Vanessa's eyes narrowed as she released Michael with exaggerated slowness. "This is ridiculous. You're all overreacting to a few harmless posts and comments." "Harmless?" I echoed. "You've been photographing people without their consent, mocking their appearances, and creating a community around degrading others. When confronted, you became physically aggressive with your husband." "It was a momentary frustration," she dismissed. "Michael knows I would never hurt him." Michael rubbed his arm where fresh marks joined the bruises from days earlier. "Actually, I don't know that anymore." Richard placed a folder on the coffee table. "Vanessa, I've spoken with Dr. Mercer. She's agreed to see you again, starting tomorrow." "I'm not seeing that quack," Vanessa snapped. "There's nothing wrong with me." "Then you leave us no choice," Richard said quietly. "Michael has documented your social media accounts. I've already consulted with colleagues about the legal implications. Several individuals in your photos could have grounds for harassment suits." "You'd testify against your own daughter?" Her voice quavered. "I'd do whatever necessary to get you the help you need," Richard replied, "including supporting Michael if he chooses to press charges for domestic violence." "Domestic violence?" she sputtered. "For grabbing his arm? That's absurd." "It's assault," David interjected. "And there are witnesses now." Vanessa turned to Michael, her expression morphing into practiced vulnerability. "Michael, sweetheart, you know I love you." This is all a misunderstanding. I'll delete the account. I'll apologize to your father. Michael shook his head. It's too late for that, Vanessa. I've already spoken to a lawyer about separation papers. You can't be serious, she whispered, genuine shock registering. I've never been more serious about anything, Michael replied. I thought I married someone kind and compassionate. Instead, I found cruelty and manipulation. What do you want from me? Vanessa demanded. I stepped forward. 3 things. First, professional help, intensive therapy. Second, removal of all offending content and a formal apology to anyone identifiable in your photos. Third, a genuine apology to David. And if I refuse? Then Michael proceeds with separation and potential charges, Richard answered. I've already drafted letters to several people featured in your posts, informing them of potential grounds for civil suits. My own father, she said incredulously. You'd destroy my life over this? No, Vanessa, Richard said softly. I'd save your life from what you're becoming. The room fell silent as Vanessa calculated her options. Finally, she turned to David. I'm sorry if my comments about your scars offended you, she said mechanically. That's not an apology, I pointed out. That's deflection. David raised a hand. It's okay, Scotty. I don't need an apology delivered under duress. What I hope is that someday you'll understand the damage you've done, not just to me or Michael, but to yourself and to every person you've mocked. So self-righteous, Vanessa muttered, but her confidence seemed to be crumbling. I've scheduled your first appointment with Dr. Mercer for tomorrow at 2 p.m., Richard said firmly. I'll be driving you there myself. And I'll be staying with my parents until further notice, Michael added. The separation papers will be filed this week. 3 months later, I sat with Michael on our back patio, watching as David tended to his garden. The legal proceedings had been swift. Michael's documentation had left little room for dispute. How are you holding up? I asked, passing him a glass of lemonade. Better than expected, he admitted. The counseling helps. Dr. Mercer says it's common to feel both grief and relief after leaving an abusive relationship. And Vanessa? Michael nodded. Reluctantly at first, but apparently she's making progress. Her therapist diagnosed complex PTSD with emerging personality disorder traits. The fire affected her more deeply than anyone realized. Understanding explains behavior but doesn't excuse it, I reminded him. I know. That's why I'm not going back. Even though she's asked. Elena joined us, carrying a plate of cookies. She and David had been spending considerable time together since she'd helped us through the Vanessa situation. How was your session today? I asked her, knowing she'd been counseling Richard. Productive. Richard's starting to forgive himself for not seeing the signs earlier. He mentioned something interesting. Apparently, Vanessa's been writing letters. Apology letters to the people she photographed and mocked. Is it genuine, do you think? Michael asked. Elena shrugged. Hard to say. Recovery isn't linear, especially with complex trauma. But it's a step. David came over, wiping his hands on his jeans. Whatever her journey is now, it's her own to walk. All we can do is focus on healing ourselves. And each other, Michael added, raising his glass in a small toast. Do you ever wonder, I asked, how many other people are hiding similar pain behind masks of cruelty? How many more Vanessas are out there, hurting others because they don't know how to face their own scars, visible or invisible? Too many, Elena said softly. But then again, there are also plenty of Davids, people who carry their scars with dignity and use their experiences to help others. David squeezed my hand, the roughened skin of his scarred palm warm against mine. In the end, we all have a choice about what to do with our pain. Use it as a weapon against others, or as a bridge toward understanding. I choose the bridge, Michael said firmly. What would you do if someone you loved revealed such cruelty? Would you have the strength to hold them accountable while still offering a path to redemption? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.